gender was just completely socially constructed and that there's really no difference between men and women except this incidental genitalia differences. We've talked about many aspects of ancestral health and evolutionary mismatch. I saw that in many areas of life. Obviously, nutrition is one of them. An ancestral perspective on diet is more helpful than much of the conventional guidance that we have had. But I saw the same thing when it came to concepts of masculinity and femininity and relationships. When I was in college, I was also getting all of this teaching from a gender ideological perspective that diminished the sex differences between men and women. I sort of got this impression from a variety of gender studies classes and like gender in art that gender was just completely socially constructed and that there's really no difference between men and women except this incidental genitalia differences. And that was just another thing that I started to really question as I was using an evolutionary lens to understand the world. Is that really the case? Is denying differences in our biology and physiology and psychology, is that helping us in the realm of pursuing human flourishing? Or is this another area that we really need to consider from an ancestral perspective? One of the most influential books I read around that time was Sex at Dawn. Is that one? Are you familiar with Sex at Dawn?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, it's by Chris Ryan. It talks about many aspects of sexual dimorphism and how it contributed to different behavior patterns between men and women for our reproductive strategies and how that affects us now. It's known for providing kind of an evolutionary argument for polyamory, which was something I had gravitated towards before I encountered it as an evolutionary perspective. The ancestral perspective on men and women and masculinity and femininity and relationships and how we express ourselves, that might be a really key part of another aspect of human flourishing that goes beyond just nutrition and fitness and other aspects of mental health.
How would you define femininity? What's kind of your elevator pitch of like if someone said, well, what is femininity to you?
It would be exhibiting characteristics that are aligned with our evolutionary expression of female versus male biology, physiology, psychology. I look at it in terms of, again, how I present myself aesthetically is just one piece of the puzzle. Of course, we get a lot of information about one another from visual indicators, but also a lot of psychological aspects that women have certain motivations that are influenced by our biology, for example, towards cooperation and sharing of resources. Sex with the much greater obligatory investment in offspring is referring to kind of the fact that we do the gestation of offspring, the 9 months plus breastfeeding and so on, amount of care that is obligatory to the female sex. That has also produced related psychological tendencies, including the need for cooperation, because the risk level is so high, given how much energy has to go into every single offspring that we produce. If something happens to us, there's a need to have more caretakers who are invested in the well-being of our offspring. I actually like to think of the female psychology as a little bit more socialist and the male psychology as a little bit more capitalist and opportunistic in terms of how we exhibit ourselves. So another example, rather than living with a romantic partner, I currently live with a female housemate and we support each other in terms of sharing of resources and responsibilities and things. So that's part of that kind of cooperative nature that we have. Femininity is more associated with being and masculinity is more associated with doing. As a woman, my presence and the care and nurturing and just qualities that I contribute just from the essence of vitality has a certain value that I bring to the equation. And it's a more masculine approach to be more oriented towards action and outcomes and results and delivering on things. We look at those as things that we can be attracted to as well. As a woman, I'm attracted to men who are very effective and, get things done, if we see that as something that we can align toward positively rather than something that we need to fight against, then that can be helpful. Evolutionary feminism is a term that I've used, and it's the idea that rather than try to have women make progress by becoming more indistinguishable from men, we have more to gain by becoming more similar to ancient women. Some of it would be kind of the roles that we play in terms of nurturing and domestic contributions, just kind of the complementarity of male and female ways that we exhibit biologically, physiologically, socially.
Well, I definitely want to explore the difference between femininity in the past versus how we see it play out now. But before we fully go there, do you think that femininity and masculinity equally share their contrasts? And what I mean by that is it seems to me that usually femininity is defined by masculinity, but is masculinity defined by femininity? Because it doesn't seem like it, particularly in very specific sections of our society. So let's just say like executive world or within entrepreneurship, femininity and the power of a woman sometimes seem like they were being defined by how they compared to their male counterparts. And almost like the woman had to be like the man in that position. How can we define femininity without comparing it to masculinity?
If we're talking about a role of CEO and how someone is going to express masculinity or femininity, I think there's something somewhat inherent in that type of a role that is a more masculine expression, which could be embodied by someone who's either male or female. So when I mentioned, evolutionary feminism, in our ancient past, there was a huge value that was seen in women as being in the roles of domesticity and child rearing and, motherhood that we've actually devalued. In the attempt to pursue kind of independence for women, we've done this thing where we sort of decided that the way to make women independent was to model what men have done in terms of going outside the home and getting into the labor force as a way of acquiring money and resources. In the process of encouraging women to pursue those kind of roles, which is not in itself a bad thing, but what it has done is it's actually devalued the contributions of things like domestic labor and childcare. Those used to at least have some kind of monetary representation when it came to a single income family, say where the husband was going out to work outside the home and bring in the money and then pay for the needs and expenses of the wife and children. The work that she was putting in was financially represented in that agreement. But we chose this model where the only thing that has a monetary value is work outside the home. That's one of the things that I think has actually been somewhat detrimental, is that we have devalued all of the things that relate to taking care of a domestic environment. You can get paid for cleaning someone else's house. You can get paid for babysitting someone else's children. We've just sort of eliminated the value of these things in our monetary representation. A friend of mine once said, I don't know where.
That's such a good point. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a real statistic or just a generalization, but she said, if you counted all of the contributions that women make inside the home, our GDP would double. And, we don't think of it that way.
If you enjoyed the clip from the podcast, make sure to check out the next video up here, or head over to watch the full episode down here. And before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Come on. Yeah, thanks for watching.